at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's, off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
Touchdown!
Sixers,
and
Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station.
Happy Black Friday, after the day after Thanksgiving to everyone out there listening on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on a Black Friday. Glad to have you guys on board the show. Coming up, as usual on a Friday, we have Mike McGarry will join us coming up at 2:40 p.m. for the Press of Atlantic City. Also, we have KC Joyner. One thought on every game. We will recap Thursday's action, and we will preview Sunday's action of NFL. We had the triple header yesterday on 97.3 ESPN. The Lions-Bears game was weird. The Cowboys-Raiders game felt like it was two different games. And I feel like the Cowboys stole the Eagles' tendency to have. Remember the Eagles for the first few weeks of the year? They kept committing penalties. Every single game was driving us all nuts. Well, now you have the Cowboys doing what the Eagles used to do. So that's hilarious. I mean, there was penalties on both sides, but it was funnier to watch the Cowboys basically implode at times during that game. Also, of course, we got to bets, picks, odds for the weekend. Of course, brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Dallas Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. Josh Hennig playing for Mike Gill live here in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Again, as I mentioned, text board is open at 609-403-0973. You could DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. We are live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. Before we get to anything else, before I get to recapping the games from yesterday or anything like that, I got to tell you guys, big news today. Big news on the Eagles. I know it wasn't very hyped up because of the way the press conferences went, which no offense to anybody with the Eagles organization or the players or the coaches, but I know that what they were trying to do was cram what happens on Thursday into Friday, leading into Nick Sirianni. But the moment you put Darius Slay up there to the podium, you don't put a guy in front of the media if he can't go. But because of the way they set it up, Sirianni speaks last, and the question is, so I guess Slay is playing. It's like, oh yeah, Slay's playing. So that was kind of clunky the way the Eagles went about it. But either way, that is the big news coming out of today's Eagles so far. It's official. Darius Slay is good to go. And that's a big, big news moment for the Eagles because you have a guy in Slay who is basically the centerpiece of your defense. Slay at this point in Jonathan Gannon's defense is the most important person because when Slay is out there, they play a completely different style of defense. When Slay is not out there, they play prevent defense and they play scared. When Slay is out there, they're much more aggressive. They're much more assertive. So I'm looking at the Slay dynamic against the Giants team with a new play caller, who loves to pass, by the way. Remember, Freddie Kitchens, when he was in Cleveland, we saw that he loved to have Baker Mayfield chuck. He loved to just gun, throw, let's go. It's only under Kevin Stefanski that they become a running team with Nick Chubb. So I expect the Giants to do some passing. And if they're going to be passing, I am very happy to see big play Slay out there against whoever. Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, whoever. Doesn't matter. Put them on both of them. Switch them all off and on. I don't care. Slay is having a Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber season at corner. And in Jonathan Gannon's defense, you have seen already this year that when the Eagles have Slay out there, they're more aggressive, they're more assertive. When Slay is not out there, they get timid, they become passive, and we all want to smash our face into the wall after watching that Eagles defense when they play indifferent and passive. I hate it. You hate it. Anybody who loves football hates it. But now we have Slay out there. To me, the Eagles can win this game. He was the one guy that I said from day one of this week, if Slay's out there, I think they're winning. If Slay's not out there, I think they're losing. It's that simple to me. Daniel Jones is not as great as some of the pundits want you to believe. There seems to be this sweeping movement across everyone in the NFL. And I don't know where this started. I don't know who thought this was important, but there's a contingent of people who want to insist that Daniel Jones is a good NFL quarterback, or at least that he's better than he used to be. I'm not accepting that. I'm not going to sit here and, lay some tofu in front of you for Thanksgiving dinner, okay? Listen, you know what I ate yesterday? Because I love food and I love football and I love watching movies. You know what I ate yesterday? I ate real turkey. I ate real cranberry sauce and stuffing. I ate real potatoes and I ate real green beans. You know why? Because I like food, all right? The problem is that there's people out there who don't actually want to admit the truth about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, on a good day, is an average NFL quarterback. And on a bad day, he throws the stupidest interceptions I've ever seen. Daniel Jones is tofu turkey. He's the fake stuff that people put in front of you in the holidays because they claim they're trying to be healthy. They claim they're trying to whatever. Don't sell me tofu and tell me it's turkey. Stop trying to tell me that Daniel Jones he's dangerous. No, Daniel Jones' legs are dangerous. Daniel Jones is a very underrated athlete. Daniel Jones this year has run for 14 first downs in 10 games. That's more than one first down per game. That's the highest average of his NFL career so far. So Jones is dangerous on the ground. But guess what? He has 7 interceptions on the year. 7 in 10 games. So if you want to sell me that this tofu is real turkey, I'm not playing with you, man. Daniel Jones is top 5 in the NFL in fumbles lost this year. Daniel Jones is top 5 in the NFL in being sacked. He's top 10 in the NFL in turnovers. So don't tell me how good Daniel Jones is. And I'm ashamed that people who I think are smart football people are trying to sell you, who are listening to me, who consume content, who love football, who love the Eagles on this garbage. Daniel Jones, on a good day, is an average NFL quarterback. On a good day, he's a lesser version of Kirk Cousins. Daniel Jones has just two games with at least 2 passing touchdowns this year. His best game this year was against the New Orleans Saints. Now, I will give you that game was in New Orleans. That was when the Saints defense was more healthy than the Eagles faced them. But that was also the game that Daniel Jones really manipulated them. They didn't know what to do with him. He was running. He was completing the ball. He had a great game. I'll give it to him. His second best game was against a Raiders team that just snapped their 5-game losing streak. His third best game was against a Washington defense that is among the worst in the NFL in scoring defense. So I'll give you that he's had some moments, but so does Kirk Cousins. So does Baker Mayfield. You're not starting in the NFL because you're an imbecile. You're starting in the NFL because you have talent. The key to this game is Daniel Jones. The Eagles can't underestimate him, but they can't over-respect him. They got to get after him. Daniel Jones is not that much better than Trevor Siemian or Teddy Bridgewater or Jared Goff. You can do to him what you did to the others. The only caveat is you just got to be aware of his mobility. That's all. He has weapons. Blanket those weapons. Get them off timing. Disrupt the routes. If you're watching that Cowboys-Raiders game last night, what did the Raiders do in the first half? They didn't do in the second half. They disrupted Dak Prescott's timing. They didn't allow him to hit runners in stride. Now, in the second half, they didn't do as good of a job because the Raiders' defense has less talent than the Eagles' defense. They have good pass rushers, but the Eagles have a better secondary. Josh Hennig here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Still to come on the show, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City at 2:40. Also the football scientist, writer for Philadelphia Inquirer and The Athletic, KC Joyner, joins us at 3 p.m. for an abbreviated Sports Bash here on a Black Friday on 97.3 ESPN. We have Flyers hockey coming up at 3:30 p.m. today. So I got you until Tim Saunders, Steve Coates take over right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. You know, when you're watching the games yesterday, and I understand that the first game nobody cared about for the most part, and it was pretty boring for the most part. Honestly, the most entertaining part of the Lions-Bears game was Joe Buck and Troy Aikman trying their hardest to make the game better than it was. I will say, though, the other two games showed you something about the NFL this year. We keep saying the NFL is a week-to-week season. It's a week-to-week proposition. But you're also seeing that the basics of football still hang up. They still hold up, I should say. You still have to get pressure on the quarterback. You still have to disrupt routes if you want to have a chance to win. You can't commit penalties. The Cowboys' penalties killed them. There were penalties on both sides. They were throwing flags left and right. Whatever the over-under was on penalties on the Cowboys-Raiders game, that person hit the over and ran to the bank with it. But the Cowboys' penalties were way worse. And Anthony Brown, the cornerback, has to be the dumbest corner in the NFL. I have seen football for 30 years called one way. They always throw the flag on the guy who's not playing the ball. It's very simple. And Anthony Brown He doesn't get that. He's an imbecile. The fact that the Cowboys keep starting that guy tells you how incompetent of organization they are, or at least how incompetent their coaching staff is, because it's so simple. I can call a flag that's going to be thrown every time I see a receiver not play the ball, he plays the receiver. Anthony Brown is staring right at the receiver. They're always going to throw a flag. It doesn't matter if you agree with the call or not. That's how the game is officiated. But Anthony Brown doesn't get that. He's just dumb. You can't do that. Football is not as complicated as some people try to make it out to be. If you have ever seen the movie Oscar, where they're trying to, they use the word oxymoron, and they're trying to explain to the main mobster what it means, and Stallone turns around the Chaz Palminteri and Tim Cruise and says, "You're an ox and a moron." That is exactly what Anthony Brown is, or any cornerback who doesn't get this by now. You have to play the ball. But because the Cowboys are more flash than substance, they lose a game they could have won. It doesn't matter what your team is. It doesn't matter how good your team is, how bad your team is, who your quarterback is. You have to play smart football. You can't be the idiot. Being the idiot in the room is not going to help you. And it's going to hurt your football team every single time. I ranted and raved right here on 97.3 ESPN on game night for weeks. I was telling you guys, the Eagles can't keep committing these penalties. They can't keep just shooting themselves in the foot week after week after week after week. Something's got to give. I kept saying it again and again. They were averaging the most penalties per game through the first 6 weeks of the season. The Philadelphia Eagles are now on a stretch of games where they have kept their penalties under double digits. Something they couldn't do for the first few weeks. They have become a much more disciplined football team. And because of that, they are now a winning football team. The last time the Eagles had a plethora of penalties in a game, and I mean like a lot of penalties, I don't think we realize this. We haven't talked about this in weeks. This was the first 5 weeks of the season. Every single week, we come in here and be like, oh, there to go the Eagles. Derek Barnett. These guys are stupid. They don't know what they're doing. Nick Sirianni, got to get your team disciplined. Jonathan Gannon, what are you doing? The Chiefs game, when they lost 42-30, they had 9 penalties. Since then, here's the penalty breakdown. 6 versus the Panthers. 4 versus the Bucks. 4 again versus the Raiders. Are you sensing a pattern here? 2 against the Lions. 3 against the Chargers. I'll keep going. They had 7 versus Denver, but that's the Derek Barnett effect right there. They had 6 against the Saints. A little more, but they still won the game because they're running the ball. For the most part, the Eagles have gotten the penalties in check. What did you see in the games yesterday? The 3 teams that lost yesterday, the Lions, the Cowboys, and the Saints, they all kept getting penalized. It's frankly embarrassing to watch. You know, I'm starting to feel bad for Dan Campbell. I think Dan Campbell, if he had a legitimately good roster, I think he'd be a good football coach. And I I'd be cool with him being my football coach. Dan Campbell gets up there after every press conference, and he just comes off as a defeated guy. I mean, I'm not saying Nick Sirianni is much better than Dan Campbell, but if you would have given Dan Campbell the Eagles roster to the Lions roster, he may have the same, if not more, wins this year, honestly. I think Dan Campbell is getting as much as he can out of an abomination roster as possible. And you know that the Bears were trying to win a game because they were tired of being dumped on by the national media. The Raiders, they were trying to snap their 5-game losing streak. The Cowboys kept self-imploding. By the way, I told you guys on Wednesday, one of my bets, my surefire bets, Dalton Schultz to score a touchdown. I took that. I hope you took that as well over on FanDuel Sportsbook. That hit. That was a nice little winner for you on Thanksgiving Day. And then the night game, the Bills just ran away from the Saints. I mean, I thought the Bills would win the game. I didn't think the Saints would look that bad at home. And in a game where they're bringing Drew Brees back, they're celebrating Drew Brees, all this good vibes, and then you go out there and you just look bad. You got to have a little more heart. You got to have a little more want. You got to have a little more something. I mean, they lost Tre'Davious White yesterday in the game, the Bills. He's one of the best corners in the NFL. And you couldn't score in the Bills defense, a Bills defense that has allowed a lot of teams to score on them in recent weeks. Think about this. The Philadelphia Eagles allowed the Saints to score 29 points against them. 29. Now, compare that to a team like the Buffalo Bills, who just beat the Saints 31-6. Don't tell me the Bills defense is that much better than the Eagles, because it's not. Especially when you lose your best corner. The Bills defense got some problems. Because they allowed 41 to the Colts, 17 to the miserable Jets. They lost to the Jags 9-6. And a couple of weeks before that, they lost to the Titans 34-31. So the Bills' defense is good, not great. But for the fact that the Saints went out there with an embarrassing performance, man, I think the Saints got to have some questions about the quarterback situation moving forward, because you gave Taysom Hill all that money. You barely used him yesterday. Trevor Siemian is maybe the worst backup quarterback in the NFL right now. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we got a lot of things to do here on the Sports Bash on a Black Friday. You can text the show at 609-403-0973. We're also live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. And of course, you can DM us through the 973 ESPN mobile app. You listen to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, game that with Josh Hennig, as well as the Locker Room with Billy Schweim, and Flyers hockey at 3:30 today on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of CLC. Still to come, the football scientist, NFL Insider KC Joyner at 3 p.m. Mike McGarry for the Press of Atlantic City at 2:40. But on the other side, JR from WagerPro.com joins us next here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein, we have a big show lined up. Former Eagles linebacker Brad Quast joins me in the studio. The sportsbook consigliere Dave Sherapan checks in from Vegas with his picks. Brad and I attend the preview of American Underdog. We'll have reaction from a couple former Eagles. Our special guest is 3-time Super Bowl champion and 5-time Pro Bowl selection from the New York Giants. Senator Bart Oates calls in to talk about his memories, the Eagles-Giants rivalry. It's the locker room with Billy Schwein, Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. Happy Black Friday, everybody. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving day yesterday. There were 3 games in the NFL yesterday and another slam-packed football weekend still coming up. So to touch on more of that with us right now, JR, wagerpro.com and the Wager Pro app joins us right now on the phone line. Another big winner last weekend. Dolphins, of course, hit the under. And I'm sure JR had another winning Thursday as well. And he joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. JR, how you doing?
I'm doing good, other than sitting on the side of the road waiting on a buddy of mine to bring a jack so I could change my tire, side of the Long Island Expressway. I'm sure you guys know that road, but doesn't mean that we're not here to make money and bring you more action and do it yet again. Yesterday, another big day. Had Buffalo huge last night. What an easy winner that was. Had the Detroit winner as well. In fact, everybody at Thanksgiving said, well, who do you need? And I said, well, I got the Lions +3, which means the Lions will lose this game in the last second by a field goal and wind up losing by 2. You watch.
I mean,
so no money line bet on the Lions.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of those games also where it was just, I mean, like the only reason you're watching is because you either have money on it or because you have fantasy football riding on it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no interest really for anybody to actually sit down and watch that game unless they put some money on it. But look, we can make every game a big game by giving you what we do, and that is by giving you winner after winner. Guys, I've got an underdog in college football for tomorrow's action that's going to win outright. Now, I'm going to give it away for free. Call this number, 800-499-3733. I'm leaving the game on a recorded message. Again, absolutely free. Another underdog that'll win outright. We've hit them now. I think this is the 4th week in a row we're giving you an underdog on the pick phone on this interview. And every week I'm winning this game. And we win big we're talking landslide. So I've got a dog that I believe strongly is going to win outright. It's absolutely free. It's on the recorded message. Call the number, 800-499-3733. That's 800-499-3733 for this week's Underdog Blowout outright winner.
Joe, I want to ask you about a couple of games on Sunday here before, we get your free pick, because you've been firing on the free picks on the phone call. You've been firing on the free picks on the air. Before we get to that, I want to ask you about a couple other games. First of all, I want to ask you about locally a big game in our area, Eagles at Giants. Darius Slay, he's been confirmed to play. That's a big deal for the Eagles defense. Giants, new play caller, Jason Garrett, out of New York.
I think that the firing of Jason Garrett is going to get the offense of the New York Football Giants absolutely pumped. This is a team that, let's face it, their record isn't really indicative of how well this team has played at times. And Philadelphia has been rolling. I agree with you that, with a lot of the injuries coming back throughout the last couple of weeks to some football teams. Look at what Tampa Bay has been able to get back. There's been a lot of injuries that have gotten back to teams from the early start being out, and now all of a sudden we're seeing big turnarounds. And Philadelphia, to me, has played better this year than I expected. Jalen Hurts has been playing just out of his mind good football. Great decision-making, knows when to run, knows when to throw. I'm liking what I'm seeing with this kid. I thought that going with him as a starter this year was a mistake, and boy, I was wrong. They're playing great with him right now, but I think they're going to have trouble on the road. I really do think that the Giants got something to prove this week, and this is quite the rivalry. So I think the Giants are going to walk away outright dog winner.
Titans and Patriots, talk about guys playing well. Mac Jones is not just a sexy pick to win Rookie of the Year, but he's making the Patriots to be a trendy pick right now. I understand a lot of books have them 6.5 against the Titans right now, but could this be a game where the Patriots keep rolling?
Man, I tell you, another one, Mac Jones has just been playing out of his mind. It has been incredible to watch. Belichick is, everything that we thought he was. He wasn't able to get it done with Cam Newton as his quarterback, but it seems the young guns, he knows how to really get them ready and get them out there playing better football than I think they were even capable of before they got so well coached. So, look, Tennessee's got a lot of issues right now with injury. We know that. And I don't think they're going to play well this week against the New England team that is looking for another win at home. They didn't play well at home the early half of this year. So now they've got some making up to do at Gillette Field. I don't like the 6.5 points, so I would not make this a big bet. If I had to use it, though, I think the Patriots get the win. It's going to come close to that spread. I think they win by anywhere from 6 to 10 points.
WagerPro.com, the Wager Pro app. JR joining us right here on 97.3 ESPN. JR, one more I want to ask you about. A lot of Eagle fans are going to be interested because they're trying to get to the postseason. They are in shooting range, but there's the Vikings and the 49ers lurking out there, and those two teams are playing each other after 4 p.m. on Sunday.
Well, let's face it, San Francisco has had quite a bad little run early part of the season. They've made up for it the last couple of weeks. They've looked fantastic. And same thing with Minnesota. Didn't come out the gates doing very good, but Kirk Cousins, you realize Kirk Cousins has less interceptions than any quarterback in the league right now. He knows how to protect the football. He's been doing a great job distributing it. He's not just looking for his one or two main hot routes. He's really putting the football all over the field. He is playing lights out. So you're going to give me 3 points going against a team in San Francisco that I think they can falter at any time, as they've shown for the early parts of this year. So I would take the points there. I like Minnesota plus the points, but not a big game for us because it can go any way.
Absolutely. Of course, before I let you go, what is JR's pick of the week?
Well, let's give out another winner like we've been doing every week. So, like I told you off air, that the New York Jets seem to be the gift that keep on giving. And they can't score. They're not covering games. I'm not going to tell you to get on Houston, though. And again, I love the under. Go under 45 points. That line opened up at 46.5. And they had the juice heavy on the over side until all that sharp money came in. Guys like me betting the under in that game. It's an easy one. Go under 45 in the Jets, Houston. But guys, again, I've got a blowout that's going to win outright, a huge game that you can make yourself a nice score on. It's absolutely free on a recording right now. Call the number 800-499-3733. That's 800-499-3733. I hope the quality of the phone call was well. I'm on the cell in the car, like I said, on the side of the road. But hopefully everyone is stuffed from yesterday, and hopefully I can stuff your pockets with big cash with this huge winner. Call the number 800-499-3733 and visit me at wagerpro.com.
Don't forget the Wager Pro app. Download it now. JR, hope you have a better weekend than you're having right now. I'm sure you're going to have more winners this weekend. Hopefully you get back up on the road very soon, my friend.
No question about it, guys. Be safe and go out there and make some money.
JR, wagerpro.com and the Wager Pro app. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Black Friday here on 97.3 ESPN. As usual on a Friday, we got Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City joining us next. And then KC Joyner, the football scientist, at 3 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea City.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
There's a runner by Maxey. That's up and good. Tyrese Maxey, man, he's got game. That's for sure.
The Sixers host the T-Wolves. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
This week's featured bet is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. In SEC action, take Auburn at home to cover 19.5 versus Alabama. Bet all the action in style at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It would be a Friday if Mike McGarry wasn't here from the press of Atlantic City. Of course, Mike McGarry's appearance on the Sports Bash being brought to you by Calvi Electric. There it is. Calvi Electric now offering residential services for your home and business. Visit them online at calvielectric.com. Another busy football time of year for Mike McGarry from the press of Atlantic City with high school football Thanksgiving Day games yesterday. Mike, how you doing today?
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Doing well, though I have a little technical issue because I dropped my headphones underneath the desk while I was getting on. So I had to turn off the mic and turn it back on to hear you. Mike, listen, before we get to all the Eagles stuff and everything like that, I want to ask you about the Thanksgiving Day games yesterday because at Holy Spirit, big win for them. At Millville, big win for them. A couple of large scores for some local teams yesterday.
Yeah, 3 pretty lopsided wins in the games that were played locally. Atlantic City, Holy Spirit wins. Millville over Vineland pretty easily, and Ocean City over Pleasantville pretty easily. And just what you saw this year in these rivalries is you saw 3 really good teams taking on teams that are kind of rebuilding, right? And the results were as expected. And, Ocean City was a South Jersey Group 4 finalist. They lost to Millville. Millville is the South Jersey Group 4 champion. They'll be playing Winslow Township in the regional title game next weekend. And you have a Holy Spirit team, though, although they finished the season 5-6, began the year number 1, our Elite 11, hurt by some injuries in the middle of the season, 4-game losing streak, but ended up, getting those guys back and going to the state non-public B semifinals. So, 3 talented teams against 3 kind of rebuilding teams.
You and Mike Gill were having a conversation the other day on Wednesday about these Thanksgiving Day games. And, how much longer do you think we could actually keep doing this? Because, with the state playoffs going the way they are and with the schedules the way they are, and let's be realistic, is it really a rivalry anymore if one team's blowing out the other each year?
Yeah, I mean, these things tend to go in spurts, right? So, although Holy Spirit has won 4 in a row from Atlantic City has had times when it's dominated the rivalry, and same thing with Vineland. Vineland, I think, still leads that overall series with Millville. They met 150 times. My personal belief is it's going to be up to the schools, right? I don't think the NJSAA is ever going to come in and say, hey, you can't play on Thanksgiving. They might make it almost impossible for you to play on Thanksgiving, but if you want to play on Thanksgiving, they're going to allow you to do it. So it's going to be up to the schools. 90% of the schools in New Jersey have kind of opted to put their Thanksgiving rivalries to bed, so to speak, including Mainland EHT, who has shifted it to the beginning of the season. Hamilton and St. Joe, who no longer play. This year, Oakcrest and Absegami elected to play, not wait for Thanksgiving. They elected to play, 2 weekends ago. And I don't want to say get the game out of the way, but just play the game and not have the kids sit and practice for 2 weeks. So I think they're going to leave it up to individual schools to make their decision. So if schools want to continue to play on Thanksgiving, I think they'll be able to do it, but it's not going to be easy for them, basically.
Yeah, and logistically, listen, I love the tradition. I love the fact that this area has, not just this area, there's other parts of the country that have Thanksgiving Day games, but the reality is, like you said, the scheduling and the logistics of it are going to become more difficult. And to me, it's more important to preserve the rivalries than have them specifically on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I would agree that to a degree, because you look at some of the rivalries we have are no longer the Thanksgiving rivalries. Like, again, Holy Spirit, Atlantic City, big rivalries, but that rivalry might mean more to the alumni, to the guy who goes to a game once a year. to the people involved in high school football on a daily basis, it's probably Holy Spirit versus St. Joe that's a bigger rivalry, or Holy Spirit St. Augustine. Hey, do we have a bigger rivalry than Mainland Ocean City? You know, it doesn't matter when they play. It's a huge game. It's one of the biggest crowds of the year. They don't play on Thanksgiving. So rivalries ebb and flow. You have those neighborhood rivalries. I know it, but you're right. To preserve the rivalry should be your number one goal. And that's like my idea, is to shift these rivalry games to the first game of the season. And I'd like to see, there was a decent crowd out at Holy Spirit Atlantic City yesterday. I'd like to see what the crowd would be if you were playing that game the first week of the season.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ES. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at AC Press McGarry. Mike, another rivalry game is Eagles-Giants this weekend. Big news to me. This game was going to be made or broken by Darius Slay's ability to play. Well, Darius Slay is going to play in this game, according to him and Nick Sirianni today. So how does that change what could be the outcome of this game in your mind?
Well, I mean, Slay has lived up to the nickname this year so far, right? Big play Slay, and he's been able to score some defensive touchdowns. And when the Eagles defense plays against quarterbacks who are either mediocre or bad, the Eagles defense plays well. When the Eagles defense faces a really good quarterback, the Eagles defense seems to struggle, and we spend the next week questioning Jonathan Gadden's scheme. Well, right. Daniel Jones would unfortunately fall into one of those mediocre to bad quarterbacks. So if you have all your defensive guys, especially a guy who, you know, scored a touchdown last week and you know, has been able to make some plays on the defensive side of the ball, that's only going to help you.
You know, when I think about also this game, I talked about this earlier before you came on, I don't understand these people keep trying to tell everybody that Daniel Jones is better than they think. Like, I don't understand. There's this group of people who I think are smart NFL people, and then they go out and say that Daniel Jones, oh, he's actually having a good year. And I'm like, in what reality? The guy's top 10 in the NFL in turnovers. On a good day, he's an above average NFL quarterback. To me, I don't think he's that much better than a Jared Goff or a Teddy Bridgewater, Mike.
Well, at this point, and I would agree with you, he's not having a good season this year, but I think you have to hold out and judging him yet, because everything has been stacked against him. It's been bad coaching, and it's been a horrid offensive line play. So I don't know if he's ever really had a chance. So I don't know if we know how good Daniel Jones is, although it's getting to the point with the Giants where if they continue down this path, they might have to just get another quarterback for, you know, karma reasons, or cleanse the palate, or sell something else to the fan base, right? Because Daniel Jones' play has been so bad. I mean, I said to somebody this morning, I've been around Giants fans for my entire life. I think you've got to go back to the 70s, the Joe Pisarcik, Larry Zonka fumble, the first miracle of Meadowlands with Herm Edwards, to have Giant fans expressing the sentiments that they're expressing after the loss to Tampa Bay on Monday night, where Jones, of course, threw that horrible interception to the defensive lineman. As I said, as soon as that defensive lineman caught the ball, Giants fans picked up their phone, hit the secondary market, and were looking to sell their tickets to Eagles fans for Sunday immediately.
This game is going to be also interesting because, like, you know, you, Mike, mentioned earlier in the week, the firing of Jason Garrett, bringing in Freddie Kitchens. I remember Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland. He was all about throwing the ball. He was not about running the ball. So, you know, could we see Daniel Jones potentially just chuck it all over the field, at least attempting to?
Well, one of the reasons they fired Jason Garrett was they thought the play calling was too conservative, right? So we'll see if it opens up more under Kitchens. You look at Kitchens' past history in 2018, he's basically in the same position. He takes over the Browns as offensive coordinator kind of midway through that season and does pretty well. And the Browns actually go to the playoffs that year and impress. They do so well that the Browns make Kitchens the head coach in 2019, and he goes at 6-10 and gets fired. So Kitchens is kind of a mixed bag there. The only thing that worries me about this game, if I was an Eagles fan, or what I would worry about, is it looks too good to be true. And when things are too good to be true in the NFL, they often are. You know, everything seems to be going the Eagles' way. The Giants seem to be at a low point in turmoil. The Eagles are soaring. Hurts is playing well. The defense is playing well. Sirianni's running the ball, 270 yards a game. It looks like everything points towards the Eagles. And unfortunately, NFL, when everything points in that one direction and it looks like no way the other team can win, how often have we seen the other team win?
So does that mean you're picking the Eagles to win this Sunday?
This game, I'd stay away from this game, honestly. I think at home, it's hard to count. I just think the Giants, you don't know what Kitchens is going to do. You don't know exactly how good the Eagles are, basically. To me, it's a kind of a stay away game. I don't think it's the Eagles 3.5 points. That's right. Right in that danger zone there. To me, it's a game that you sit home and watch and see what happens. I wouldn't honestly be surprised if either team wins. I'm not so convinced yet that the Eagles are on their way to 10 wins and the playoffs myself. So I take a wait and see approach to this Sunday's game.
Mike, one more before I let you go. The team leading the NFC East is now 1-3 against the AFC West this year. Another weird loss for the Cowboys. Horrible penalties on both sides. But are the Cowboys imploding, or is it just a reflection of their injuries?
Well, maybe a little of both. I definitely think they're leaking transmission fluid all over Jerry Jones AT&T Stadium down there in Dallas, Texas. They have not looked good. I know people will point out, 3 of the 4 losses are outside the conference, but you watch those losses, the penalties this week and against Kansas City, the penalties were horrendous. I mean, especially last week against Kansas City, it seems like every time they had a positive play, there was a holding penalty that brought it back. Offensively, they have not looked good. And honestly, Dak Prescott has not looked right since the Patriots game when he hurt the ankle or calf and had to sit out. Their offense sputtered yesterday. I know Prescott got hot in the fourth quarter. You can tell me the receivers are out. No CeeDee Lamb, no Cooper. But I'm not convinced. That's why people say, wake up this morning and say, the Eagles got no shot at the division. And I don't know how good the Eagles are, but mathematically, and I know the Cowboys play at the Saints, and they're struggling more than anybody. But, I wouldn't trust the Dallas Cowboys, in any game going forward. I think they've got some offensive issues. Not saying that they can't be worked out, but they certainly don't look like the same football team they were a couple of weeks ago.
Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City here on 97.3 ESPN at AC Press McGarry. Check out all of his coverage over at the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, appreciate you jumping on the day after Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great day yesterday. And I know Mike will be catching up with you on Monday's show.
All right, looking forward to it, Josh. Same to you. Talk to you later.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Mike McGarry's appearance on the Sports Bash being brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business. Visit them online at calvielectric.com. Coming up on the other side, we'll talk more football with KC Joyner, the football scientist, right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Free, thanks to First Bank of CLC. I'm Josh Hennig, filling for Mike Gill at Josh Hennig on Twitter. We got tons of more football leading you up to Flyers hockey at 3:30 p.m. today.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey later today on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
What a save by Carter Hart.
The Flyers host the Carolina Hurricanes.
Coverage begins at 3:30. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN and listen live on the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Black Friday edition. Leave you at the Flyers hockey at 3:30 on 97.3 ESPN. Also, about 25 minutes from now, we will give you the High School Athlete of the Week. People have been voting over at 97.3 ESPN.com. We'll give you the winner in about 24 minutes from now. But joining us right now, as he does each and every week here on 97.3 ESPN, he is the football scientist, KC Joyner, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, his appearance being brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook Inside Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. Casey, how are you doing on this day after Thanksgiving? I know there were 3 interesting football games, we'll call it, yesterday.
Yeah, interesting. The Lions and the Bears one was kind of, interesting, like a train wreck is interesting. At least there's something to see. It was interesting football. I was surprised that the night game wasn't as uncompetitive as it was. I mean, I write an article each week from the Inquirer, and it includes a 10-pack of things for fantasy and gambling tips and such. And as part of that, I had picked the Bills to cover, but the Saints just. Wow, I'm surprised they look so bad on both sides of the ball. I mean, they completely didn't show up. So that was the biggest surprise of yesterday, because the Lions, I kind of expected them to win, and that Cowboys Raiders game was exciting.
Yeah, so let's hit really quick on each game individually. First of all, I want to start with the Cowboys game with you, because those penalties, people are complaining about the refs. But let's be realistic. They call it on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony Brown has to be the dumbest corner in the NFL. I have never seen a flag not thrown on a guy who doesn't try to guard the ball. He literally was facing the receiver every time or grabbing him. Like, how does someone not tell him, Anthony, they're going to call that flag on you every time. You're an idiot.
Yeah, coach him up, do something else. You almost would rather him tackle the guy, because if you're going to get the pass interference, at least just make 100% sure the guy's not going to catch the ball.
Absolutely. The Cowboys having all those penalties, it's almost like the opposite of what happened earlier this year. The first few weeks, we were complaining about the Eagles and all their penalties. Now the Cowboys have all these penalties.
Yeah, and the thing is the penalties, though, as you mentioned, hey, people get mad at the refs. Look, if a guy tackles a guy in coverage or does what he does, you got to call it. If they jump offside, you got to call it. You can't tell the refs, oh, by the way, there's a massive false start there. Don't call it, because then you get mad at them for not calling it. Call it on the teams for not being well coached. I mean, because that's what it comes down to. When it's penalties like that, especially the type of penalties they had, a lot of the times it comes down to subpar coaching. And right now, the Patriots make a big deal about when they get late in the season of making sure that their team's going to be following fundamentals and such. And I think you were seeing yesterday that when bad coaching or when bad play out they got comes up, it's because there's coaching and they're not concentrating on fundamentals.
And then, of course, you mentioned the Bills' big win on Sunday night. Are the Bills back, or are the Saints just going into the tank?
I think it's a bit of both. I think the Bills are finding different ways to win, where they were going vertical early in the season. Teams are starting to take that away. They finally found a way to counterpunch. Oddly, it took them this long to do it because they had the same thing happen last year. As far as the Saints go, too, Simeon's just not a very good quarterback. He's a backup. They say if you get a backup quarterback, you hope he can maybe get a chance to win half the games. And it's kind of unfair to him because he's had tough games to try to win. But yesterday he played at a level that says he's just not good enough to be an NFL backup.
KC Joyner, one thought on every game. We'll get that in just a bit. But first, the Philadelphia Eagles right now, as you wrote over at the Philadelphia Inquirer, Casey, they're in a position to not just make the playoffs, but could they really catch the Cowboys for the NFC East?
The article I wrote there, the first part of the article is about the coming into before the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving. The Eagles were listed at plus 1,100 on BetMGM to win the NFC East. That means it's 11-1 odds. And I looked at that. I said, that really doesn't seem to make sense. And I keep looking at things. So I ran some numbers through the New York Times playoff predictor. And the New York Times playoff predictor, you can actually put in there and say, if this team wins this game, if that team wins this game, what are the odds that you win the division? It didn't take very many games for the Eagles to say, oh, look, they've got a 3-1 chance to win the division. So I think it's a very good wager. I honestly thought the Cowboys would beat the Raiders yesterday. You factor that in, and I think the Eagles have a very good chance to win the division as is. And I think yesterday's game only helped that situation. Not saying they will, but right now they're only a game and a half out if they win tomorrow or Sunday.
Well, yeah, so the big deal for the Eagles is going to be the fact they have Darius Slay. That's been confirmed today by the Eagles. To me, that's huge because it seems like when Slay is out there, Gannon plays one defense. When Slay isn't out there, He goes into this passive, I'm 15, 20 yards off the line of scrimmage with my corners. It just looks so bad when you watch the game. So what does Darius Slay mean for the Eagles heading into a Giants game like this?
The funny thing is that Slay's metrics, if you look at his coverage metrics, they've been really good at times and not so good other times. He's sometimes even borderline bad on occasion, where he kind of reminds me a bit, not quite, but a bit of Lito Shepherd, where you can expect a big play either way. Either he's going to make a big play or he's going to give up a big completion. It's kind of, that's how it is for him. He's probably better in coverage than Shepherd was. But the thing is, when he's out of the game, I think Gannon loses some of his confidence in saying, I can play this caliber defense, this type of defense. Because I think he tries to set up a defense to say, I want to let Slay go make plays. Because a lot of times teams will have that. You have good coverage on one side and you get a ball hawk on the other. And you can say, a guy who can ball hawk. So you say, okay, we can rotate and get good coverage on that one side, we can give him back up and let the other side alone, a thing. And I think they could still do that if they want, but Steven Nelson is so bad in coverage that I think they say we can't just, if we can't put Nelson in that area, we can't let him do that. So I think it will make them more conservative. But against the Giants, I think when you've got a guy like Jones who's going to make a lot of mistakes, I still think you need to be aggressive in coverage, because otherwise he will beat you a lot if you let him throw dink and duck passes. But if you let him make risky passes like he will, then you can get a couple of interceptions. I think they don't have to change the game plan. Keep going.
Yeah, to me, it seems like Daniel Jones people are trying to tell people that Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than he was before. And I'm just like, what game are you watching? I feel like people are so intent on trying to sell Daniel Jones. And Casey, I can't buy it. It's a stock that I refuse to buy into.
The thing is he's sometimes, he's a very good running quarterback. He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not Jackson. He's a very good running quarterback. They'll have that in there. And then we'll have something else. I feel bad for him, though, because he's had so many receiver injuries. So you're getting used to one set of receivers 1 week and one set of receivers another week. And Kadarius Toney looks good at one time, but now, he doesn't look like the same receiver. And Kenny Golladay is not what he was in Detroit, and yet they have him out there. So I feel kind of bad for him from that perspective. But if you're the Eagles, show no mercy. He's out of sync with his receivers. He's not in the same page as the receivers. They look really rusty. Fine, make him even rustier. I would get after him, and I'll play tight on those receivers, because I think the Eagles still have enough cornerback talent to where I don't want to see them trying to play tight in press coverage all the time. But if they get a big play and you get a big play, if they throw a touchdown against you, you get an interception in this kind of matchup, you'll win the game, because if you're getting interceptions, you're beating these guys.
KC Joyner, the football scientist, joining us on a Black Friday here on 97.3 ESPN. A little earlier than usual. We have Flyers hockey at 3:30. So KC joined us a little bit earlier in the day here on 97.3 ESPN. KC, obviously, the big news for the Giants also is Jason Garrett out, Freddie Kitchens in. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Last time I saw Freddie Kitchens calling plays, it was a very pass-happy offense over there in Cleveland. I believe one of the problem with Garrett was he was too conservative. So could this be a kind of almost like a, for lack of a better term, just gunslinger kind of offense he's going to try to run out there on Sunday?
Well, think about it. If you're Joe Judge and you're concerned that there's reports out there that Dave Gettleman, the general manager, is going to get fired if they don't turn things around. So if you're going to get fired, you might as well be aggressive. Being conservative, if you're aggressive and you maybe win a couple, you shouldn't win. Maybe if you're Joe Judge, you keep your job. And if you're Freddie Kitchens, you're thinking if we be aggressive, we go ahead and be that way too. The thing is that you can't change a system in the middle of a season. It's too complex. You can't do it. So all he can do is keep calling the same plays they've been calling to the same people they've been throwing to. So I think that, in fact, early in the season, though, too, by the way, Daniel Jones had a very high rate of passes downfield. The downfield throws were much higher than they have been later. So it's not like he's been conservative the whole time. So, Kitchens going in and calling a more aggressive game plan is one thing. I just think the receivers are I think Golladay is still banged up. I think Toney's still banged up. I think that even though, not on an injury report, they're not the same receivers they were earlier this year. I think that's an issue for them that they're not going to be the same offense, if they are more aggressive. So Kitchens might help, but I don't think that much.
Casey, on the other side of the ball, the Giants defense, they may look good with certain names on paper, but they have been rushed on. The Eagles coming in with this great rushing attack. And think about it. This is a Giants defense that's allowed, 201 yards to the Cowboys, 170 to the Saints, 165 to the Broncos, 131 to the Rams. So the Eagles can run on this defense.
They can. Over the last 4 weeks, to running backs, I do some charts that I do for for my fantasy work of The Athletic, and the Giants over the past 4 weeks, they ranked 19th in fantasy points allowed to running backs, so 62 carries for 275 yards, 4.4 yards per rush. That doesn't include quarterback rushing though too. And again, against the Eagles, you're going to see a lot of that. So that's 19th in the league, by the way. So they're even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, they're still middle of the road in that category. It's something that they're very good at. What I would be concerned about though is that in the vertical passing game, that's passes thrown 11 or more yards downfield, they're fourth best over the past 4 weeks. They're only allowing 7.5 yards per attempt, and they're not doing very well there. But I think that would play into the Eagles' hands because the Giants want to sit back and stop vertical passes. Fine, we'll just run mid-side inside zone plays the whole game and punch you in the mouth. Because the Eagles, by the way, 175 yards in 4 straight games. They're only the 4th team since 2000 per stat. They've done it in 4 straight games since 2000. They're the 44th team to do that. So you think about that, it's 22 seasons. About 2 times a year this tends to happen. So they're on that kind of a streak right now. And there's very little reason to think they can't do it again. I'm not saying they will, but there's very little reason to think they can't make it 5. And if they do, I think there's only 5 teams that have done that since 2000. So I mean, they're on a rare run right now as far as this run offense is.
Well, Casey's official pick a little bit later in the segment. First, one thought on every game is just every Friday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. Casey, couple ugly games coming up on Sunday. One of them is the Falcons and the Jags. I don't even know what good I can say about this game, except for I guess if you have maybe guys on your fantasy team might be interested.
If you got Kyle Pitts, you're hoping something happens. I've got Cordero Patterson on one of my teams, so I'm hoping he comes back and I can sure use him. You're right, could be the ugliest game of the year. Atlanta's outscored 68-3 over the past 2 games. They posted 236 net passing yards in that game combined. I mean, 236 yards over 2 games. They look lost without Calvin Ridley. Teams are figuring out how to defend Kyle Pitts. Jacksonville's offense hasn't looked much better, though. Trevor Lawrence is hitting the rookie wall, I think. I'm adding some things together. I think the difference of having Patterson back will finally give Atlanta another playmaker, and it'll be able to give them, because Jaguars have also allowed 298 rushing yards over the past 2 weeks. I think Atlanta leans heavy on the run. They win.
Heading over to staying in the East, in the AFC East, the Patriots, they're gunning for the Bills, and it starts this Sunday as well. The Titans, they're falling apart, Casey.
Titans are falling apart. They're just not the same team without Derrick Henry. Over the past 3 weeks, they've only had 238 rushing yards. They're just not a very good team. They're obviously John Julio Jones. He's still in IR. AJ Brown didn't play today, so I think that they're not going to have. If they don't have AJ Brown, then again, I was talking to somebody earlier today. He's like, maybe Belichick always tries to stop one player. What if you don't have a player he has to worry about stopping? And if you don't have AJ Brown, then you've got nobody. So I just think that, and plus with the interceptions that Tannehill threw last week, I think he added a lot. The Patriots going to win pretty handily.
The Jets are getting Zach Wilson back, it looks like, but it doesn't seem to matter because the Jets are just that bad, right?
The Jets are terrible. And the thing is that Houston over the past 2 weeks, they've picked up 5 takeaways in each of the past 2 weeks. I mean, 10 turnovers is what they created on defense over the past 2 weeks. Zach Wilson has a 5% interception rate this year. So he's actually probably going to literally be a step down from Mike White, Joe Flacco, even Josh Johnson probably played better in the time that he was in there. So they were inept at takeaways too. They had 2 against, but in the upline a couple weeks ago, they had 2 in that contest were at the end of the game when they were already down. So you take those out, they've had 6 takeaways the whole year. I think Texans not handle it, but I think the Texans definitely going to win this one.
One thought every game. KC Joyner here on the 97.3 ESPN. Follow on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS. Tampa Bay goes on the road to play Carson Wentz, Frank Reich, and the MVP candidate Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis.
MVP candidate. I wrote in the article too for the Inquirer, by the way, he's up to plus 2,000 odds for the MVP because running backs don't tend to win it. He's up to plus 200 though in offensive player of the year behind Cooper Kupp, and I think there's a good chance he could overtake Kupp by the time the season ends. The Colts, their defense deserves a lot of kudos too, though. They're getting 2+ takeaways in all but 3 contests this year. Tampa Bay's been struggling against the run sometimes because they allowed 295 rushing yards against Chicago and New Orleans. They've righted the ship, though, some of late. So you've seen some instances where teams can run, but typically you can't run against them. And when it comes down to it, I know it's in Indianapolis. Home field's meant nothing this year. Look at it, Carson Wentz versus Tom Brady. I just can't pick against Brady. It's a very close game, but if I've got to pick a tiebreaker, then I'm going to pick the better quarterback of this one. So I'll go the Bucs.
In a matchup of AFC North teams, no, not the Sunday night game, the other game, the Steelers and the Bengals, What do we do with these teams? I feel like from week to week, we're getting a different team with these two teams.
For the Steelers, it's good for them because last week they had to play a shootout. They didn't have a choice because they had lost all their playmakers on defense except for Cameron Hayward. And he tried. He almost won the game by himself, but he couldn't quite get it done. But they're going to have Watt back. They're going to have Fitzpatrick back because a chance they have Joe Hayden back. Hayden might actually be, I don't want to say the most important of that group, but in some ways he might be because he's the one shutdown guy in their secondary. Fitzpatrick can be a good ball hawk and can cover deep, but Hayden's a guy who can actually take somebody out of a contest, and their other corners are really not that good. And that's what concerns me is that if Hayden's not there, I know the Bengals passing game hasn't been quite as good of late, but they're going to have a lot of talent versus some less talented Steelers coverage players. So I'm going to take the Bengals.
Two more teams that are going in strange directions. The Panthers heading to Miami to take on a Dolphins team that all of a sudden figured out how to win again.
They did. I thought Brian Flores I thought he should have been coach of the year, coach in 2020. I thought he was that good. And this year, after about 9 games, it was, does he need to be fired? I mean, they were playing that bad. They're playing below their talent level, which is kind of the measure I use for a coach. Does your team play to the talent level that you have? And I don't think they're a greatly talented team, but they weren't anywhere near as bad. But now they've run off 3 straight wins. They're doing a variety of approaches. They had that blitz-heavy approach versus Baltimore. They had 4 takeaways against Houston to get that, and they posted nearly 400 yards against the Jets. So that's the Jets defense. Having said that, you got Christian McCaffrey on the Carolina side of the ball. I just don't see Miami having a playmaker of that caliber. You've got DJ Moore, and you've got Robbie Anderson starting to play a little bit better after getting out to a really terrible start, and you've got a fired up Cam Newton. So I think Carolina's going to win this one.
KC Joyner, one thought on every game here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Black Friday. AFC West rivalry game. Chargers and Broncos, but this isn't Dan Fouts versus John Elway. This is Justin Herbert and Teddy Bridgewater, 2 very different offenses.
Herbert could hold up with those other guys. Bridgewater, good game manager, not so much big plays. It's tough note to make of the Broncos. I mean, they get that huge Week 9 upset against Dallas, and then look what they did last week. They allowed 216 rushing yards, and it's just the last time they played, I should say, the Eagles rushed 216 yards, and they got crushed. So it's a bit easy to predict what you're going to get from the Chargers. They've been in shootouts in 3 of the last 4 games. I define a shootout as when both teams score 24 more points. They like getting into shootout games. They're 4-1 into the season, and that's a rare thing. Most teams get into shootouts is 5 proposition, even for the best offenses, and they're doing quite well. I think they can get Denver into that sort of mode, and I'm not saying that Denver can will get a shootout, but they can get them in that sort of mode. And if you could do that, I think you got a good chance to win. So I'll take Chargers.
Eagles' playoff chances are going to be in the conversation for this game because 2 teams are keeping an eye on the Vikings and the 49ers going head-to-head.
Yeah, I guess, we just mentioned shootouts. It's easy to see why Mike Zimmer doesn't like to get in them. They won last week, but their shootout record is 2-3, and San Francisco could get them into that kind of a shootout because Minnesota, I mentioned the metrics I have over the past 4 weeks per True Media. Minnesota ranks 30th in the league in fantasy points, a lot of vertical passes. They're terrible, but they can get into that sort of shootout mode. I think San Francisco, because they're going to be able to run the ball well, they got to hope they get Eli Mitchell back, but Wilson's proven pretty good. And they can basically the kind of running they give their backs, they can get things done. They have put Deebo Samuel back there for 20 carries if they needed to. I think it's going to be enough strengths for them to take this contest, but I think it will be a shootout, probably 50-50 prop.
The Rams and the Packers, it's Aaron Rodgers' broken toe versus the Rams' broken offense?
Yeah, I think about it. 146 rushing yards in the past 2 games, 4 giveaways. They just don't know what to do without Robert Woods. Woods is a great receiver, really good receiver, I should say. I mean, Kupp is the guy that made the great receiver. I think one of the reasons that Woods hasn't been quite a centerpiece of the offense is he's such a good blocker. And if you can block as well as he can, and it's so central in the offense, you have those condensed formations where they bring the bunch set in and they want the receivers to either block or go run for passes. It really makes the defense, it throws the defense off because, do you play that as a run or do you play it as a pass? But I think that's a problem for them. And Green Bay was 7-1. They've lost their last 2, but Dylan's there and Rodgers is going to play, even though he didn't practice today. You add all that up, I just think they have a little more firepower with Rodgers and Adams and even A.J. Dillon if Jones can't go, and the Rams just have those problems. So I'm going to take Green Bay.
And then finally, the marquee game of Sunday Night Football in the AFC North. It's the Browns. It's the Ravens. I'm going to assume that both teams are going to get almost 200 rushing yards, right?
They probably will. They want to. They're certainly aiming in that direction. Baltimore's more pass heavy this year than they have been in past years because people were finally figuring out how to, if not slow their offense, at least put them into a game mode where they couldn't be as effective. But, I mean, they've given up 352 rushing yards over the past 2 weeks, and Baltimore will be finally realizing they were getting too far away from the run-centric route. Says the game against Miami showed them you can't just be pass heavy. I mean, because a team like Miami can come in and beat you with that sort of thing. They can put you into that sort of mode. So I think they're going to get back to getting their run heavy approach. Plus, Lamar Jackson, he's now finally healthy after having that non-COVID-19 illness they called it. He's finally done with that. Everything seems okay there. So I'll take Baltimore.
All right, Casey, before we let you go, we always like to get your pick for the Eagles game. Don't forget, folks, check out all of his coverage, Philadelphia Inquirer and The Athletic with KC Joyner. Casey, what is your pick for Eagles-Giants?
I've been against the Eagles for most of the year, at least pick-wise. I'm not against them per se. You know what I mean? I've made picks against them because I think there was better picks to make because they weren't doing what they should, especially on offense, and they had some problems with defense too. But in this contest, I mean, again, it's only actually I take that back. 175 more yards in 4 straight games. It was another study I did. It was 44 times. It's been 19 times since the 2000 season. Only 2 teams, the 2016 Cowboys and 2018 Ravens, at the 5-game mark in that span. So this is something that's really rare to see them run this well. You realize they don't have Howard. We're going to have Scott. You're going to have Gainwell. Going to have Sanders. I think they're still going to run the ball quite well. I don't think the Giants have any. They're not. I think Kitchen's going to solve the problems that they have on their offense. Their offensive line, by the way, is still just bad. It's not very good, and that's a big part of it too. So I think that they're going to get a couple of turnovers there as well. They're going to run the ball quite well. I've got them winning at a very high confidence level. I think the Eagles this is going to be the beginning of a roll for them.
KC Joyner, one thought every game here on 97.3 ESPN. He'll be back on Monday with Mike Gill to recap the weekend. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS. Casey, appreciate you jumping on earlier in the day here on a Black Friday.
Hey, glad to do it to help out hockey. Hey, why not? Right? Why not, eh?
Casey, you're always preaching, man. Take care.
Thank you. See ya.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Casey Joyner's appearance on the Sports Bash being brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook Inside Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. All right, as promised, the high school athlete of the week. Before we get out of here, we usually announce this on game night on 97.3 ESPN. But since there will be no game night today, I will give you the winner. We told you the nominees earlier this week. The nominees include Jameer Cartagena of St. Joe's of Hamilton, caught a 59-yard touchdown. The loss to Red Bank Catholic. Brendan McGarry kicked a field goal for the Red Raiders. Holy Spirit only points in their loss to Millville. And, of course, you have LaQuint Allen of Millville, carried the ball 27 times for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Elijah Stewart of Holy Spirit caught 2 touchdowns in the first half. Gives the Spartans a lead at halftime in their 28-14 loss to DePaul Catholic. But the winner of the South Jersey High School Athlete of the Week goes to J.C. Landicini of Cedar Creek. Completed 22 of 27 passes for 375 yards and 5 touchdown passes in their win over Delsey in the South Jersey Group 3 title game. Be sure to tune back to 973ESPN.com and the 973 ESPN mobile app every week to find out the nominees for the High School Athlete of the Week presented by 973 and Prime Events. So congratulations to J.C. Landicini. Won the vote by 20 votes. Not a runaway, but definitely a solid win for J.C. Landicini getting the votes this week. All right, as promised, I would like to give you guys some picks before I get out of here for the weekend. I do have the Eagles winning the game, and I think they cover the 3.5. I think they win by at least a touchdown. I have the Eagles winning on Sunday over the Giants. I'm going to go 27-20. I think that the Giants will score some points because it might take some time to adjust to whatever craziness Freddie Kitchens pulls out of his back pocket. But I think in the end, the Eagles running game ices the game in the second half. Give me the Eagles 27-20. Also, over on FanDuel Sportsbook, Brooks Koepka is plus 114 in the match today. So I like that. Could be a nice winner for somebody right there. I also like tomorrow, my pick of the week, Auburn, 19.5 at home. Auburn has been a house of horrors in the Iron Bowl for Alabama. Bryce Young has never played at Auburn in the Iron Bowl. I think Alabama wins, but Auburn covers. Flyers next here on 97.3.